Good evening, everybody. Michael D. sitting behind the mic again. And tonight's topic, should local police act like National Guard? Ron, what do you think about that situation in Buffalo, New York?
Yeah, where the two local policemen were in a special units thing, and they came in to bust up a demonstration, whether it was peaceful or not, and ended up shoving a 75-year-old man to the ground and injuring him, ear bleeding, denoting possible brain damage. Pretty serious thing, Mike. And I'll tell you, I don't think our local police should be really doing a job that the National Guard should be called in to do. For the simple reason, one very simple reason is when it's all over, the local police have to hang around and be resented by some of those, some of the citizenry that they had to come up against. Whereas that if it were the National Guard that came up against the local citizenry, they just disappear. They go back to their quarters. They're not even in town anymore to take any of the heat. Why should the police have to take this kind of heat? Local police. They're trained very differently. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I agree with you with that. It even makes the local citizens fearful to walk the street in fear of either they'll get beat or tased or sprayed. You know? And we can't have that. What needs to be happening is the mayor or the police commissioner needs to weed these people out like bad boys. Alright? And just fire them on the spot. If they get mean or rough with anybody, get rid of those bad ones. Get somebody better than them to take their place. It's simple to do. But will they do it? Who knows? Ron?
Well, Mike, there's so many dimensions to this thing. I mean, I think the police are being forced to do more than their jobs call for. They're supposed to keep the peace and all that. I know that SWAT and all that was started for drug busts mainly, to go in and bust up drug dealers and things like that, and other things too, maybe hostage situations, whereas the National Guard wouldn't be called in. But here you've got crowd control, you've got demonstrations going on that could get out of hand and be anything but peaceful. But why should the police be trained to handle big crowds like that? Local police, it's just too much for them. The pressure's on them to be bullies and everything like that, and they're not supposed to be. To most of the populace, police should be friendly and everything. They live in the same town usually, and they have to hang around. I mean, with the National Guard, it's different. The National Guard are trained quite differently too. The National Guard aren't going around giving tickets to speeders and all that, and over to meters that have run out, and jaywalkers and all this other thing. The police are trained in so many different ways. Why should we train our police, our local police, to be as violent as they can be? I just don't really get it. If you need the National Guard, call the National Guard. Never mind handing all this to the police. If you want, I'll tell you how this all became popular, too, to make the police force like the National Guard. Would you want to hear that, or do you have a comment on this one?
I have a comment on this one. But, you know, what I saw, okay, was an excessive use of tear gas that wasn't necessary. I saw one person, their mask was pulled down by a police officer, and then pepper sprayed. That was uncalled for. On the protesters' behalf, he didn't make no advances. to the police officer itself. I think it's an excessive use of force on some police officers. Just as to say, some police officers give the police department itself a black eye. That's why I said you have to weed out the good with the bad, no matter what it takes. And this process, you can have a good force again, where people aren't scared to walk down the street in fear of being tased or maced or beat with a billy club or any of that stuff. Ron? Ron, let me ask you this question. How do you feel about excessive police force in this country we live?
Well, Mike, in many communities, the police want to be friendly toward the populace. And there's a lot going out, a lot of publicity going out from the police departments trying to befriend the cities and the citizenry, saying that they're on their side, they're there to do good for them. But when there's demonstrations, things like that, and when things might get out of hand, I think the police have to back off and the National Guard has to be called right away. The thing that popularized the most, I think, this SWAT, these SWAT tactics, SWAT. I think what popularized that was a TV series called SWAT. And people thought, oh, that's good, that's normal, that's great. They're going to be busting up drug rings and things like that. But for that to go any further than busting up drug rings or maybe a hostage situation where maybe a robber has hostages in a bank and they have to use a SWAT team or something like that, well, for something like that, they can't call the National Guard out. But for crowd control, where there's hundreds, maybe even thousands of people that might be getting out of control and they need the National Guard, bring in the National Guard. Don't have the local police doing this. I mean, as I said before, the local police have to live where they make their mistakes. You know, if the National Guard makes a few mistakes here and there, at least they clear out and they're gone and nobody sees them anymore. Not the citizenry. They still see the police, but the police have stepped aside for the National Guard to do their work. Like I said before, the National Guard are trained quite differently, a lot differently than the local police should be trained.
Oh, yes.
What are your thoughts?
I would agree with that 1,000%. You're correct. They are trained much, much differently than the local police departments. Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to see is you can have special units, don't get me wrong, but I would disband the unit they have in Buffalo, the special unit they have. And if you want to come up with different kind of training, okay, for special units, that's the way to go. Because
Mike, yeah, I might say you remember that I think all of the people in that unit, that the two policemen that were dismissed, suspended, whatever, they were suspended, I think all of them gave up. They just
they resigned.
Left their jobs. But they didn't resign from the police force. They did not resign from the police force. But they resigned from that special unit. They don't want to be part of that special unit anymore. And this has to say something to all the police forces in America. You know, this is no good. This is no good for them. They shouldn't train until they're like the National Guard. It shouldn't happen.
That may be what they tried, but it doesn't work. Okay? Everybody's trying to be a bully. You know, if you get a badge, you're on a power trip. That's for some of them. Some of them just say, oh, I'm the big guy now. Big dude on the block. And they're on a power trip. This doesn't fly. the citizens are to be served and protected. Some of them that just are on a power trip, okay, just don't deserve to wear the badge. Okay? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, they shouldn't go in there with the mind of, if they want to protect people and everything like that from warring against each other, like there are some demonstrations where they're not all on one side. They're against each other even, and they've got to keep them apart. They've got to keep them apart. I can see that. But as far as
I would say leave the peaceful protesters alone. Okay? They're entitled to that. It's when it gets out of hand they're not entitled to it. But they're even bothering the peaceful protesters.
Right. Yes, Mike, it was the constitutional rights that they have that I was trying to think of to peacefully and demonstrate. That should be allowed, but they can't block traffic, and there's a lot of other things they can't do. They can't threaten. They can't do a lot of things that the police would know that they would be doing wrong, possibly. But I don't know. This whole thing goes too far when they start acting like the National Guard, when they have shields and helmets and rubber bullets and tear gas and all this other stuff that you mentioned. You know, that they just shouldn't be doing. I mean, not against their local citizenry, and they have to live in those towns where they are.
Correct, you are.
Quite different. Oh, by the way, there's another thing too. We had a situation in Waco, Texas, where the Army actually went in against the citizenry. That's really against our Constitution. And our own Army should be going against anybody. I mean, it should have been the National Guard down there in Waco, Texas. We're all Americans. I mean, we should learn to unify. We're supposed to be the United States of America, not the disunited States of America. We've got to find ways of keeping this country together. Everything seems to be falling apart today. Everything.
We can do this if we all come together. If we all come together, we can do this thing hands down.
Okay, Mike. I understand we're about out of time here, but it's been nice talking about this. It really is bothersome to me that all this is happening, but go ahead and sign out. We might have more to say on this in future times.
Thank you, Ron. Well, you know, if you all liked this show tonight, please give us a thumbs up in Twitter. We'd appreciate that. And tell us what kind of topics you would like us to talk about. All right? So with that being said, remember, till next time, stay safe, be healthy, and may God bless. Peace to everybody. Good night.